The mother-in-law defecated in a gift box and handed it to my son, laughing. "The gift you deserve, puppy." I silently took the gift and shoved it in her mouth. But then the most interesting part began. And before I start, I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Victoria abruptly raised her head from the computer when the agitated nurse, Gail, burst into the office. "Vicky, something unimaginable is happening in the registration area. A woman is screaming throughout the entire clinic, demanding a doctor without waiting in line, saying she has connections at City Hall." Victoria tiredly rubbed the bridge of her nose. Monday at the Health Plus Medical Center was turning out to be especially difficult. The computer in registration broke down in the morning. One of the doctors called in sick, and patients, as if to spite them, were pouring in an endless stream. "I'm going to sort it out," she answered briefly, getting up from the desk. At 34 years old, Victoria had seen all kinds of things in her position as senior administrator, demanding patients, difficult relatives, doctors who caused scenes. But today something told her that this day would be special, and not in the best sense. In the registration area, chaos truly reigned. An elderly woman in an expensive mink coat was waving her hands in front of the nose of young receptionist Olivia, who was clearly on the verge of tears. "Do you understand who you're talking to?" screamed the stranger. "I am Helen Richardson. My late husband was deputy operations manager at the manufacturing plant, and my son works at a major architectural firm downtown." Victoria came closer, studying the troublemaker. A woman of about 50 with carefully styled honey blonde hair, in which every strand glistened from hairspray. A thick layer of foundation on her face. Lips painted with bright red lipstick. Gold earrings in the shape of leaves swayed with each sharp movement of her head. "What's the problem?" Victoria asked calmly, approaching the counter. Helen turned to her with a look as if a servant stood before her. "And who are you?" "Senior administrator. Explain the situation." "I need a cardiologist. Immediately. My blood pressure is through the roof. My heart is racing. And this girl," she pointed her finger toward Olivia, "says I need to wait in line. How dare you?" Victoria glanced at the computer screen. There really was a line of about 15 people for the cardiologist. "Mrs. Richardson, if you have an acute condition, we can call 911. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but there is a line." The woman's face turned crimson. "What, are you mocking me? I'm telling you I have connections. One phone call and you won't be here." "Then call," Victoria answered imperturbably. "And until you call, take your place in line or leave the premises." Helen opened her mouth, clearly ready to issue another portion of indignation. But something in Victoria's cold gaze made her press her lips together. She turned around and, loudly clicking her heels, headed for the exit. "And remember my name," she shouted in parting. "Helen Richardson. You'll regret this." Victoria watched her leave and shook her head. She had seen dozens of such entitled people. True, the surname seemed familiar, but where could she have heard it? In the evening, having gotten home to their 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-rise building on the north side of town, Victoria was still thinking about the morning incident. Michael was already home, sitting at the kitchen table with a laptop, working on something in AutoCAD. "How are things, sunshine?" he asked without looking away from the screen. "Fine. And your project?" "Submitting tomorrow. Working on the final details. By the way, Mom called, reminding about Ethan's birthday." Victoria froze while taking off her jacket. That's where she heard that name. Richardson, her mother-in-law's maiden name. Could that entitled woman from the clinic really be? "Michael, what's your mom's full name?" Her husband raised his head and looked at his wife in surprise. "Helen Richardson, why?" Victoria sat down on a chair, feeling something unpleasant lurch in her stomach. So it was her mother-in-law. The woman who 7 years ago, when Victoria first came to meet Michael's parents, greeted her with the words, Well, son, I suppose it could have been worse. Nothing special, Victoria lied. Just remembered. In 7 years of living with Michael, relations with his mother never improved. Helen remained pointedly cold, always found a reason for criticism. Either their apartment was too small, or Victoria didn't cook right, or dressed inappropriately. When Ethan was born, her mother-in-law announced that now she would come more often to monitor the proper upbringing of her grandson. "Mom, tomorrow is Saturday," came the excited voice of Ethan from the kids' room. "Is Grandma Helen coming?" "Yes, buddy," Michael answered. She promised to come early to help set up for the party. Victoria felt the familiar tension in her shoulders. Days when her mother-in-law came turned into tests of endurance. Helen seemed to switch on inspector mode, evaluating every little thing in the house. 5-year-old Ethan ran out of the room in dinosaur pajamas, disheveled and flushed after his bath. "Mom, will Grandma Helen bring me a present?" he asked, climbing onto Victoria's lap. "Of course she'll bring one," she answered, kissing her son on the top of his head. "It's your birthday tomorrow." "What present?" "I don't know, sweetie. You'll see tomorrow." Ethan nodded contentedly and ran back to his room. Victoria watched him go, thinking about how quickly time flies. It seems like just yesterday he was a tiny bundle at the hospital, and now he's already a real little person with his own personality and opinions. "Michael," she addressed her husband, "did your mom say what she's planning to give?" "She said the gift will be special," he answered without looking away from the drawings. Something that Ethan will remember for a long time. Something in these words alarmed Victoria. Helen and her special gifts. Last year, for her grandson's birthday, she brought an old encyclopedia from the 1980s, explaining that modern children should know how their parents' generation learned things. Ethan was upset then. He wanted a Lego set like all the kids in kindergarten had. And what did she mean by special? Michael shrugged. "Mom is a creative person. She loves surprises. Don't worry, Vicky. She's his grandmother. She loves her grandson." Loves. Victoria wasn't so sure about that. Helen treated Ethan strangely. On one hand, she constantly talked about what a special grandson he was, how he resembled his late grandfather. On the other hand, her methods of parenting sometimes perplexed Victoria. Last time, when Ethan spilled juice on the sofa, her mother-in-law made him stand in the corner for half an hour, saying, "Boys must be neat." Sloppiness is a sign of weak character. The 5-year-old child cried then, but Helen was unrelenting. "Michael, don't you think Mom is sometimes too strict with Ethan?" Her husband finally looked away from the laptop and looked at his wife with some surprise. "In what sense?" "Well, these punishments of hers, lectures about what a boy should be like." "Vicky, Mom raised me on her own after Dad left the family, and I turn out fine." "Agree. She just has old-school parenting methods." "But Ethan is still so little." "That's exactly why character is formed from childhood. Mom is right. A boy must understand that in life there are rules and boundaries." Victoria said nothing, but inside everything boiled over. Yes, Michael grew up to be a decent person, but sometimes she noticed in him the same coldness as in his mother, especially when it came to raising their son. On Saturday morning, Victoria woke up with a heavy foreboding. Outside the window it was drizzling, the sky overcast with gray clouds. Ethan was already running around the apartment, unable to sit still from anticipation of the party. "Mom, when will everyone come? Will there be cake? And candles?" "Everything will be there, sweetie." Victoria smiled, pouring him some orange juice. "First we'll have breakfast, then we'll decorate the apartment, and then everyone will come." Michael left for the grocery store, leaving his wife alone with their son. Victoria decided to take advantage of the moment and ask Ethan about his grandmother. Something about the boy's behavior after her visits had been strange lately. "Ethan, do you love Grandma Helen?" The boy looked up from his juice cup and thought for a moment. "I don't know. She scares me sometimes. Scares you? How? She always says I'm doing something wrong. That I'm not neat enough, not smart enough, not well-behaved enough. And she looks at me like this. He tried to show the look, frowning his eyebrows. Like I'm some kind of bug. Victoria's heart clenched. She knew that Helen was harsh, but she didn't think the child felt it so acutely. Ethan, if Grandma says or does something that you don't like, you tell Mom right away, okay? Okay, but Dad says that Grandma loves me and wants me to grow up to be a good person. Sometimes adults don't know how to show love properly. This doesn't mean you have to put up with what you don't like. The boy nodded and returned to his juice. But Victoria couldn't shake off the anxious feeling. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Helen stood on the threshold in the same expensive mink coat that Victoria had seen in the clinic. In her hands was a large gift box wrapped in shiny paper. "Hello," she said coolly, barely glancing at her daughter-in-law, and walked into the apartment as if into her own home. "Where's the birthday boy?" "Grandma Helen." Ethan ran out to meet her, but stopped halfway, as if afraid to approach. "Well, come here, don't be shy," his grandmother beckoned him. "I brought you a very special gift." She handed him the box. Ethan took it uncertainly and looked at his mother. "Open it," urged Helen with a strange smile on her face. "This is what you deserve, puppy." The word puppy made Victoria tense up. Something in her mother-in-law's tone was wrong. Ethan began to unwrap the paper. Victoria came closer, watching his face. The boy opened the box, looked inside, and his face instantly turned pale. "What's there?" Victoria asked, feeling her heart start to beat faster. Ethan silently held out the box to her. Victoria looked inside and felt nausea rise in her throat. In the box lay excrement. Human excrement, neatly arranged on tissue paper. "What is this?" Victoria's voice was barely audible from shock. "This is what he deserves," Helen said with satisfaction, "for being such a messy, disobedient puppy. Let him know what children like him are worth." Victoria felt something explode inside her. She grabbed the box from her son's hands, went up to her mother-in-law, and before she could realize what she was doing, shoved the contents of the box into her mouth. Helen started to choke, tried to scream, but Victoria held her firmly. "This is what you deserve," she said through clenched teeth, "for being such a vile person." Michael ran in on the noise. He froze on the threshold, not understanding what was happening. His mother was coughing, spitting, tears streaming down her face. Victoria stood next to her, breathing heavily. "Vicky, what are you doing?" Michael rushed to his mother. "Ask your mother what SHE did." Victoria pointed at the open box lying on the floor. Michael looked, and his face turned green. "Mom, what is this?" I wanted to teach the boy a lesson," Helen wheezed, wiping her mouth with a tissue. "He's so sloppy, so disobedient. He needs to know." "You gave my son SHIT for his birthday?" Michael's voice rose to a scream. "Have you lost your mind? I'm your mother. How dare you talk to me like that?" "Get out," Victoria said quietly but firmly. "Get out of our house and never come back." "Michael, you're going to let her talk to me like that?" Helen turned to her son. Michael stood, looking from his mother to his wife. Victoria could see the struggle going on inside him. Years of conditioning, guilt, habit of obeying mother clashing with the obvious monstrosity of what had happened. "Mom, you need to leave," he finally said. I need to think." "You need to think." Helen shrieked. "I'm your mother. She's just some woman who—" "Get out." Michael suddenly bellowed, so loudly that even Victoria jumped. "Get out before I call the police." Helen grabbed her mink coat and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door. There was silence. Ethan stood in the corner, pressed against the wall, tears streaming down his face. "Mommy." "I'm here, sweetie, I'm here." Victoria rushed to her son and hugged him. "Everything's okay now." Grandma won't come anymore. She gave me poop, the boy sobbed. Why? I didn't do anything bad. Because she's sick. Very sick in the head. But it's over now. I promise. Michael stood in the middle of the room, pale as a sheet. Vicky, I didn't know she was capable of this. But you knew she was cruel. You knew she humiliated him. And you did nothing. I thought it was just strict parenting. Giving a child excrement for their birthday is strict parenting? Victoria didn't raise her voice, but her words cut like knives. Michael, you need to decide right now. Either you stand with us or with her. There's no middle ground. I need time. There is no time. Choose. Michael looked at his son, who was clinging to his mother, looking at his father with huge, frightened eyes. I choose you, he finally said. I choose my family. But Vicky, she's my mother. I can't just. Yes, you can. And you must. What she did is beyond all boundaries. If you protect her now, we're leaving. The threat was not empty. Michael saw it in his wife's eyes. Okay, I'll tell her never to come here again. But Vicky, I need to understand why. Why she did this. You already know why. Because she's a control freak who thinks she has the right to control everyone. Because she never accepted me. Because she sees Ethan as her property, not as a person. Michael sat down on the couch, burying his face in his hands. How did I not see this? Because you didn't want to see it. It's easier to think that everything is normal than to admit that your mother is abusive. Victoria carried Ethan to his room, laid him on the bed, and sat next to him. The boy was still crying, but more quietly. Mommy, will Grandma really not come anymore? Never. I promise. Good. I was always afraid of her. Why didn't you tell me? Dad said I had to respect elders. And Grandma said if I complained about her, she'd tell Dad I was a bad boy. Victoria felt rage flare up again. So that's how it was. Helen not only humiliated the child, but also intimidated him, so he wouldn't tell his parents. Ethan, listen to me carefully. If anyone does something to you that you don't like, that scares you or hurts you, you must tell me. Even if that person threatens you. Even if it's someone from the family. Understand? Even if it's Dad. The question made Victoria freeze. Even if it's Dad. Okay. The boy calmed down and closed his eyes. Victoria sat next to him until he fell asleep. Then she returned to the living room. Michael was still sitting on the couch. She called, he said dully. Demanded an apology. Said you attacked her. And what did you say? That she should be grateful we didn't call the police. That what she did is, I don't even know what to call it. Some kind of insanity. Abuse. It's called child abuse. Vicky, what do we do now? Now you're going to think about whether you're ready to completely cut ties with your mother. And I'm going to think about whether I can trust you to protect our son. You don't trust me? After what happened today? No. Michael raised his head and looked at his wife. But I chose you. You hesitated. You needed time to think. Any normal person would have thrown their mother out immediately. But you hesitated. She raised me alone. She made you dependent on herself. And now you can't even admit that she's abusive. Michael fell silent. Victoria went to the kitchen and started cleaning up. The day, which was supposed to be a celebration, turned into a nightmare. After a few hours, when Ethan woke up, she tried to save the situation. Baked a cake, called a few friends with children. The birthday party happened, but the shadow of what occurred in the morning hung over everything. For several days, Helen called Michael, demanding meetings, explanations, apologies. He didn't answer, but Victoria saw how hard it was for him. He grew up in a family where mother was the absolute authority, and going against her was tantamount to betrayal. I think I need to see a therapist, Michael said one evening. Why? To understand why I didn't see what was obvious. Why I defended her even when she humiliated you and Ethan. This was the first sensible thought from her husband in recent days. Then go. And until you work through this, don't try to restore relations with your mother. But she's old, alone. She did this to herself. Michael, understand, if you let her back into our lives, I'll take Ethan and leave. I won't let my son be traumatized anymore. You'd leave me. Without hesitation, you are his father, but I am his mother. And a mother's job is to protect her child from everyone, including from family if necessary. Michael looked at his wife and realized she wasn't bluffing. Okay, I'll go to a therapist, and I won't contact Mom until I understand what's wrong with her and with me. The therapist turned out to be a middle-aged woman named Dr. Elena Martinez. After the first session, Michael came home shaken. She said Mom probably has a personality disorder, and that I was raised in an atmosphere of emotional abuse. And you're only figuring this out now. I thought it was normal. That's how it's supposed to be. Strict parenting, discipline. Michael, normal mothers don't humiliate children. Don't give them excrement for their birthday. Don't intimidate them so they're afraid to speak up. I know. Now I know. But before I thought I was just ungrateful. That I should be grateful she raised me alone. Victoria felt pity for her husband. He really was a victim. Not of physical, but of emotional abuse that he didn't even realize. How long is the therapy? Dr. Martinez says at least 6 months, maybe longer. Then we have 6 months to figure out if our family has a future. Michael looked at his wife in fear. You're thinking of leaving? I'm thinking about what's best for Ethan. And right now, I don't know if it's best for him to grow up with a father who can't protect him. But I chose you. You hesitated. And next time you might hesitate again. Michael, I love you. But my son is more important. If I have to choose between you and him, I'll choose him. These words sobered Michael like a bucket of cold water. I understand. I'll do everything I can so you don't have to choose. Therapy began. Michael went to the therapist twice a week. Victoria watched him slowly begin to change, become more confident, less dependent on his mother's opinion. But at the same time, their relationship became more tense. Dr. Martinez says, I was in a codependent relationship with Mom, he shared one day, that I sacrificed my own needs and the needs of my family for her approval. And I need to learn to set boundaries, to say no. Can you say no to her now? Michael thought for a moment. I don't know. Haven't tried yet. She doesn't call anymore. Indeed, after the incident, Helen seemed to have vanished. No calls, no attempts to meet. Victoria understood that this was a manipulation. The woman was waiting for her son to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. But Michael, under the therapist's guidance, held firm. Dr. Martinez says that what Mom did is a form of sadism, he said after one of the sessions. That it's not just strictness or old-fashioned parenting. It's a conscious desire to humiliate. And how do you feel about that? Scared. I'm remembering episodes from childhood that I'd forgotten. Or rather, forced myself to forget. Like what? Like when she locked me in my room for several hours because I got a C in math. Or when she threw out my favorite action figure, saying I was too old for such things. I was 7. Victoria listened, feeling a chill. So this was what Michael's childhood was like. No wonder he grew up unable to stand up to his mother. Michael, this is called abuse. I know. Now I know. He fell silent, then added. Dr. Martinez says Mom probably did what she did to Ethan to show who's in charge. To remind us that she controls the family. That's why I won't let her back. I understand. Vicky, do you think I'll be able to become a normal father? If you continue therapy and learn to see the truth. Yes. But in her heart, Victoria wasn't sure. Some things are ingrained too deeply. Months passed. Michael continued going to the therapist. Ethan gradually forgot about the terrible incident, but Victoria noticed that he became more anxious. He often asked if Grandma would come, whether she would do something bad again. "No, sweetie, she won't come," Victoria reassured him. "Will she come when I'm not home?" This question made her freeze. "Why do you ask?" "I just got scared. What if she comes when you're at work and Dad is home?" Victoria looked at her son and realized he had lost trust in his father. And rightly so. Michael had hesitated then, hadn't immediately protected him. "If you don't feel safe with Dad, you can go to the neighbors. Mrs. Stevens will always help." Okay. But this conversation made Victoria think seriously about the future. Was a father who couldn't protect his son really needed? One day Michael came home and said, "Mom called. Wants to meet." "What did you say?" "That I'm not ready yet. That I need to work through what happened." And she started yelling that I'm an ungrateful son, that I traded my mother for some woman. I hung up. Victoria nodded approvingly. This was progress. But then Michael added, "Dr. Martinez says I need to meet with her eventually, to talk through everything, set boundaries. Not until you're ready." "When will I be ready?" "When you can look her in the eye and say, 'What you did was monstrous and I won't forgive it.'" Michael fell silent. Victoria understood that this moment was still far off. He could admit his mother was sick, but he couldn't admit she was simply an abusive person. Another month passed. Ethan's 6th birthday was approaching. "Can we not have a party?" the boy asked. "I don't want to." "Why, sweetie?" "What if Grandma comes again?" Victoria hugged her son, so the trauma was still alive. "She won't come. I promise. And if you don't want a party, we won't have one. We'll go to the zoo, just the 3 of us. Can we go without Dad?" This question struck like lightning. "Ethan, why?" "He didn't protect me then. What if he doesn't protect me next time?" Victoria looked into her son's eyes and realized the boy was right. Michael had failed the main test. He hadn't immediately stood up for his child, and no amount of therapy could erase this. That evening, when Michael came home, Victoria said, "We need to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that Ethan doesn't feel safe with you." Michael went pale. "What?" "He asked if we could go to the zoo without you for his birthday, because you didn't protect him from your mother. But I chose you." "Too late. You needed to choose immediately without hesitation." "Michael, I understand you're trying. I see you going to therapy, working on yourself. But Ethan is 6 years old. He can't wait for you to work through your traumas. He needs a father who will protect him now, not in 6 months or a year." "What are you saying?" "That I'm thinking about separation." Michael sat down heavily on a chair. "You can't be serious." "Very serious. Michael, what happened with your mother showed that you can't be relied on. You hesitate, you doubt, you try to find excuses for a person who did something monstrous. I can't trust Ethan to you." "But I'm changing." "For yourself, not for us. You go to the therapist not because you want to be a better father, but because you want to understand your mother and yourself." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Say right now, 'My mother is an abuser, and I never want to see her again.'" Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You see," Victoria said quietly. "You still can't." "But she's my mother. And Ethan is your son. Who's more important?" Michael fell silent, and Victoria understood there would be no answer. Or rather, the answer was clear. That night, she called her friend Lisa and asked if she could stay with Ethan for a while. Lisa, without asking questions, agreed. In the morning, Victoria said to Michael, "I'm moving to Lisa's with Ethan. Temporarily. You need to decide what you want, a relationship with your mother or a family." "Vicky, don't do this. Let's think." "I've already thought. You have a choice. Either you completely cut off your mother and focus on being a father, or you continue your therapy, and we go our separate ways." But the therapist says I need time. Ethan doesn't have time. He's traumatized, afraid, doesn't trust you. Every day we stay here is another day when he feels unsafe. Where will you go? I said to Lisa's. Then we'll see. Maybe I'll rent an apartment. Michael looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. You're really serious. Deadly serious. I gave you time, Michael. Time to think, to understand, to change. But you're stuck in place. And I won't let my son grow up in an atmosphere of uncertainty. How often will I see Ethan? Once a week. Supervised. Until you can prove you can protect him. Supervised visits? Like I'm some kind of criminal. You're a person who can't be trusted with a child's safety. That's worse. Victoria started packing things. Ethan watched her with huge eyes. Mom, are we leaving? Yes, sweetie. We're going to live with Aunt Lisa for now. And Dad? Dad will visit when he's ready to be a real dad. The boy nodded. He didn't seem upset. On the contrary, there was relief on his face. They moved out that same day. Lisa met them with open arms. Didn't ask unnecessary questions. Just helped them settle in. Michael called in the evening. Vicky, maybe we can talk again? When you're ready to make a choice. I already chose you. No, you chose to not choose. That's worse. She hung up and turned off her phone. Ethan was sitting on the couch, playing with toys that Lisa's kids had lent him. Mom, will we go back? I don't know, sweetie. Maybe. If Dad learns to be brave. What's brave? It's when you protect those you love, even if it's scary, even if it's difficult. And Dad can't. Not yet, but maybe he'll learn. Several weeks passed. Victoria settled into a new rhythm of life. Work, Ethan, helping Lisa with the household. Michael called regularly, asked how they were doing when he could see his son. When you're ready to tell me you've completely cut ties with your mother, Victoria answered invariably. But the therapist? I don't care what the therapist says. I care about my son feeling safe. Can I at least see him? Saturday, 2 hours at the park. Supervised by me. These meetings were sad. Ethan was polite but distant with his father. He answered questions in one-word responses. Didn't share his thoughts or feelings. Michael tried to get closer, but the boy clearly kept his distance. He doesn't trust me, Michael said after one such meeting. No. How do I earn back his trust? By doing what you should have done right away, protecting him from your mother, no matter what. But she's sick. So what? Does that give her the right to traumatize a child? Michael fell silent. He still couldn't accept that love for his mother and love for his son were incompatible, that he would have to choose one. A month later, Victoria rented a one-bedroom apartment, small but cozy. Ethan was glad to have his own space, his own toys, his own routine. I like it here, he said. It's quiet. And at Dad's it was loud. No, but scary, because of Grandma. Grandma won't come here. Never. Promise. Promise. But that same evening, when Ethan had gone to bed, Michael called. Vicky, Mom is in the hospital. What happened? A heart attack. She's been there for 3 days. I didn't tell you right away because I didn't know how. And the doctors say it's serious. She might not make it. Victoria felt nothing, neither pity, nor joy, nor sadness, only emptiness. I'm sorry. She's asking for me, wants to see Ethan. No, Vicky, she's dying. I don't care. She traumatized my son. Let her deal with her conscience, if she has one. How can you be so cruel? I'm not cruel, Michael. I'm a mother. If you don't understand the difference, we have nothing to talk about. She hung up and turned off her phone, but she couldn't sleep that night. Thoughts swarmed in her head. Was she doing the right thing? Maybe Helen really was sick, not understanding what she was doing? But then she remembered Ethan's face when he opened that box. The horror, confusion, humiliation in his eyes. No, some things aren't forgiven. In the morning, Michael showed up at her door, haggard, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. Mom died. Last night. Victoria stood in the doorway, not knowing what to say. I'm sorry. She never admitted she did anything wrong. To the very end, she believed she was right. That's typical for people with her disorder. I just realized something. What? That I've lost everyone. Mom is gone. You've left. Ethan doesn't trust me, and it's my fault. Victoria looked at her husband. For the first time in all these months, she saw real understanding in his eyes. You can fix things with Ethan, but it will take time. And with you? I don't know. Michael, what happened can't be undone. You failed your son when he needed you most. This isn't forgotten, but maybe forgiven. Maybe. In time. But we won't be together anymore. Michael nodded. He seemed to have expected this answer. Can I come to the funeral? If you want, but without Ethan. Why? Because a child shouldn't attend the funeral of a person who hurt him, even if that person is his grandmother. Michael didn't argue. He understood there was no point. The funeral was modest, a few colleagues, a couple of neighbors, Michael and Victoria. There were no tears, no grief, just an obligatory ritual. She was alone to the end, said one of the neighbors. Poor thing. Victoria didn't answer. Helen chose her loneliness herself when she decided her opinions were more important than the feelings of others. After the funeral, Michael came to see Ethan. The boy accepted the news of his grandmother's death calmly. Will she come any more? No, sweetie. Never. Good. Michael flinched at these words, but said nothing. He understood that his son had the right to such feelings. Ethan, I want to say I'm sorry, he began. Sorry that I didn't protect you from Grandma. Sorry that I was weak. I promise that from now on it will be different. The boy looked at his father with serious eyes. Will you really be different? I'll try very hard. Okay, but I still want to live with Mom. This was an honest answer. Michael nodded and left. Victoria hugged her son. Did you really forgive Dad? I don't know. He said he'd try. We'll see. Wise words from a 6-year-old child. Months passed. Michael continued therapy, now working through grief for his mother and guilt for not being able to save his family. Victoria didn't interfere in his process. She was busy with her own life, work, her son, building a new normal. Mom, why did Grandma do that to me? Ethan suddenly asked one day. This question had been hanging in the air for a long time. Victoria understood that sooner or later it would be asked. Because she was sick, sweetie. Sick in her mind. Like crazy. Not exactly. There are illnesses when people don't realize they're hurting others. They think they're doing the right thing. And that's not their fault. It's complicated. The illness isn't their fault. But what they do is their choice. Grandma could have gone to doctors, could have tried to change. But she didn't want to. Why? Because she thought she was right, and everyone else was wrong. Ethan thought about it. And Dad? Was he sick too? Dad was confused. He grew up with Grandma and thought that's how it should be. Now he's learning that it's not. Will he learn? I hope so. But we can't wait for him to learn. We're living our life now. I like our life, the boy said. Me too, sweetie. Me too. Time passed. Ethan started first grade, made friends, began taking art classes. He grew into a smart, sensitive boy who knew how to stand up for himself. Michael continued to see him once a week, but the distance between them remained. He'll never forgive me, will he? Michael once asked. Maybe he will, when he grows up and understands. But trust you won't earn that back. I know. I lost it forever when I hesitated. Victoria didn't answer. There was nothing to add. One day Michael came with news. I've been offered a position in Seattle. Good salary, career advancement. I'm thinking of accepting. And Ethan. I'll come once a month. You can bring him to visit during school breaks if he wants. Have you talked to him? Not yet. I wanted to ask you first. Victoria thought for a moment. On one hand, distance would finally give her and her son complete freedom. On the other, a boy should have a father, even if imperfect. Talk to him. Let him decide. Michael met with Ethan and told him about the move. The boy listened and said, "Okay, but I'm staying with Mom." "I know, but I'll come visit, and you can come to me." "We'll see." This "we'll see" was Ethan's favorite phrase now. He learned not to make promises and not to expect others to keep them. A year later, Michael moved. He called regularly, came once a month, brought gifts. Ethan accepted all this politely but without enthusiasm. "Don't you miss Dad?" Victoria once asked. "Sometimes, but not much. We're fine without him. He's trying, going to therapy, working on himself." "That's good, but he didn't protect me when I needed it, and that doesn't change." Victoria hugged her son. He was only 7, but spoke like an adult. "You're right, sweetie. Some things don't change." "Mom, is it bad that I don't want to forgive Dad?" Victoria stopped working and looked at her son. "No, sweetie, it's not bad. Forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. You can forgive when you're ready, or not forgive at all. Both are okay. And you? Will you forgive?" "I already have, but that doesn't mean I'll get back together with him." "Why?" "Because forgiveness and trust are different things. I can forgive that Dad was weak, but I can't trust him to not be weak again." "I see. Like with a broken cup, you can glue it, but the crack is still visible." "Exactly." Ethan nodded and returned to his coloring. Victoria watched him and thought that her son turned out to be wiser than many adults. Another year passed. Ethan was already 8, doing well in school, playing soccer, learning Spanish. He grew into a confident, happy child who remembered the incident with Grandma as something distant and unreal. "Mom, there's a new kid in our class," he told her one day. "His name is Dylan. His grandmother also did bad things to him, so they don't see her anymore." "How do you know?" "He told me." I said mine did too. "Now we're friends." Victoria listened and realized that trauma united people, even children. "That's good that you found each other. It helps to talk to someone who understands." "Yes, Dylan says his dad didn't believe him at first, but then his mom left and Dad started to believe. Just like with us. Not quite like us. Everyone has their own story, but they're similar, right?" "A bit. Unfortunately, there are many families where adults hurt children." "And when I grow up, I'll never hurt my children," Ethan said seriously. "I know, sweetie. I'm sure of that." In the spring, Victoria met David, a doctor from a neighboring clinic. A calm, kind man who immediately liked Ethan. "He won't make me eat something gross?" the boy asked seriously after meeting him. "No, sweetie. Normal adults don't do that." "Then, okay." Victoria wasn't rushing into a new relationship. Too much pain in the past. Too important not to make another mistake. But David patiently waited, didn't pressure, just was there. "I have rules," she told him. "My son is more important than any man." "The right rule," David answered. "I also have kids from my first marriage, and I understand." Gradually, they started dating. Ethan got used to David, even grew to love him. And Victoria realized she had finally met a man she could trust with the most precious thing, her child. Michael took the news of Victoria's new relationship calmly. "I'm happy for you," he said. "You deserve happiness." "Thank you. And how's Ethan?" "Good. David seems nice." "I see. And the father's position, he won't take it." "No, but he'll be a good friend and mentor." Michael nodded. In his eyes was sadness, but not anger or resentment. "Vicky, I want to say one thing." "What?" Thank you for protecting Ethan. From Mother and for me too. If not for you, he'd have grown up as damaged as I am. I just did what a mother should do. Not all mothers do that. Mine, for example, didn't. Victoria looked at her ex-husband. He really had changed, become more honest with himself and those around him. Michael, you can become a good father, but only if you continue working on yourself. I'll continue, for Ethan's sake and for my own too. He nodded and left, and Victoria thought that sometimes separation is also a way to show love. Love for yourself, for your child, for the future. 2 years later, she married David. A small wedding, only the closest friends and family. Ethan was the ring bearer and was very proud of this role. Mom, now I have 2 dads, he said that evening after the celebration. You have 1 dad, Michael, and David is your stepfather and friend. I see. And if Michael never gets better, then I'll have 1 good stepfather instead of 1 struggling dad. That's not bad either, Ethan said seriously. Victoria hugged her son. He was only 8 years old, but he understood life better than many adults. The trauma made him more mature, but didn't break him. And Michael continued treatment and was gradually getting better. Now he could admit his mother was abusive, that he himself had been damaged by her parenting, and that Victoria did the right thing protecting their son. But there was no going back. Some mistakes truly aren't forgiven. And that's right, because forgiveness doesn't always lead to healing. Sometimes the only way to heal is to let go of the past and build a new life. Victoria built this new life without drama, without chaos, without toxic family dynamics. Just a normal, healthy life where children are loved, not abused. Where men protect their family, not betray it. And this turned out to be enough for happiness.